What's up, friends and followers? This is an enthusiastic Amir Cat sending lots of love from my home here in the Holy Land. And I want to share with you something that filled me with such a sense of motivation and inspiration the other day when I had the chance to guide a very distinguished rabbi who also happens to be my cousin, one Mr. Michael Paley, who, like myself, is an educator. My job is to teach and to preach, to animate and to extrapolate ideas about the Holy Land. And Rabbi Paley is himself a gentleman who has a long, distinguished career, whether from Dartmouth College, Yeshiva here in Israel, a professor, a dean at Columbia University, and most recently, the rabbi in residence in Budapest on behalf of the Joint Distribution Committee. And so together with my cousin, we had the opportunity to visit a place of nurturing young minds and new immigrants and the population of Israel that might not have the access to education that other places and other people do. This is a boarding school on Mount Carmel, my beloved backyard mountain, and it is a place called Yemin Ord. Everyone in Israel has heard of this place, and this is the first time that I've ever visited. And so a boarding school is not exactly part of the tourist route that you come and visit in Israel, but it's a place that I was simply captivated by. Let me explain why. Israel is very cutting edge when it comes to high tech and military tech and biotech and nanotech and food tech and all the wonderful things that make this startup society really, really cutting edge in so many wonderful ways. But sometimes, sadly, like most Western societies, it's the kids and it's education that gets left behind. And I myself have been an educator, not just as a tour guide, but indeed I have taught in a Palestinian Arab village of Duran, teaching English, and in at-risk schools, a similar boarding school to Yemin Ord for kids who would otherwise have fallen through the cracks. Manof in Akko was my home for a year, where I also taught English and served as a social worker. These are the different bits of my personal story that allow me to sit in a room with Rabbi Michael Paley, my cousin, and with different educators from Yemin Ord who welcomed him because of his role and his responsibility as a board member, fundraiser, Mr. Enthusiast for all things Israel education. And we sat together and learned and listened and conversed and challenged some of the pedagogy and the ideas that men like Chaim Perry have brought forth, and just a whirlwind of wisdom that swirled around the room in a place that sought to support young people. I myself am the product of a boarding school, and I had the lucky good fortune to be able to escape my otherwise lousy domestic situation and run away to a school in New England back when I was 14. And this was a great educational opportunity for me because I got a great education and I learned and explored ideas and had professors and teachers guiding me and helping me both for emotional personal development as well as my academic career that would follow. But this was a school for kids who are typically immigrants. Whether they come from Ethiopian backgrounds or typically from the former Soviet Union, this is a place where these kids can come and thrive. Yemin Ord, a beautiful campus overlooking the Mediterranean, tucked up on the hilltop, was our afternoon playground as the rabbi and I made our way around this campus and met with different faculty members and had our host welcome us to be able to explain to the board member what he's been raising funds for. My cousin is a tremendous force in the Jewish world for fundraising and for education and for bringing good ideas and bringing good dollars into the lives of children who need them. To work with him and to walk with him for me was a bit of a humbling experience to remind me of who my family is and where we come from and the gifts that we've been given and the opportunities to give to others. If this was not the central message of our day, I don't know what was. It's not just about giving to a child. It's about giving that child a chance to give to others. The Pay It Forward motto was central to our tour at Yemin Ord, and as we toured around this campus, it was a bit of a stroll down memory lane for me and remembering the early days of my childhood where I was at a boarding school. And I had some of the angst and the anxiety of being trapped on campus and confined to this place that was my playground, while at the same time did not let me bump up against some of the lesser inclinations that I had as a teenager. We used to sneak away as kids and have to go run through the woods in order to get away from faculty members and smoke cigarettes and do other kind of naughty things that we shouldn't have been doing at 15 and 16, but we did anyway. And I got to meet kids who were given jobs to work on the organic farm because he snuck away to try to buy cigarettes from the village next door and got caught. And it was a bit of a nostalgic stroll down memory lane for that reason, because I could empathize with this young man. And I could see that, like myself, the child of immigrants, means that sometimes we don't always fit in. Sometimes we don't belong at home because our home life is not able to provide us the academic or scholastic opportunities that we seek. And yet sometimes at these boarding schools, we're a bit isolated and lonely. I met young people and we sat in the cafeteria together eating mediocre food and reminiscing about their lives in Russia and Ethiopia and now their new beginnings here in Israel. And this institution serves to serve these children, to find them a place in our dynamic society so that they can grow to their potential. It inspired me to rise to my potential. Just like my boarding school 20 some odd years ago inspired me to be a better me. And I think these young people who we met, the Maria who sat in front of me, who's from a Christian Russian family who finds herself in Israel, a refugee from a war that she did not want. And she says, you know what, I'm not yet Israeli and I'm not really Russian. And so to be alone in a boarding school away from my mother, new immigrants in Israel, is the right place to be. She was wrestling with that discomfort and that seeking of identity that young teenagers should all be seeking. And to be in an environment that cultivates that curiosity, that sense of self, that growing, flexible, malleable young mind that hopefully has the nurture to be able to thrive in the future was something that was tremendous simply to admire and to step back and to listen to these young people. We walked around campus. We walked into a synagogue and we saw there next to the prayer shawls and the prayer books was a little bit of a flipboard with numbers. And the students asked their teachers, can we count? Just like the Jewish people count the days of the week and we count the Omer, the counting of different Jewish holidays is part of our tradition. But this was counting the number of days that captives have been taken from their homes, the hostages, the kidnapped, our Jewish friends and sisters and brothers who have been held for the last 83 days in Hamas captivity. And it was there in the synagogue because the children asked it to be. It was important for them. And while this has nothing to do with the long-standing Jewish tradition, it was well placed. These children were well placed in this school. And the funds that my tax dollars pay in order to be able to support these young people and the funds that my Uncle Michael raises in order to be able to support these young people were well placed. It's wonderful to see that in Israeli society, some of the people who might otherwise not receive the support and the funding that they need in order to thrive, those among us who are immigrants or from broken homes or from lower socioeconomic status, are given a chance to grow and to be great. In America, it's the wealthy who are given the extra tax dollars in the best school districts, but in Israel sometimes it's those who are struggling the most who are given the most attention. And that is something that I love about my society. While we're at war and Gaza is burning and the horrors of this war and October the 7th are still seared in our hearts and in our minds, nonetheless, there are young people who are going to school. There are new immigrants who are given a chance at a boarding school to thrive. There are teachers who are dedicating not just their time and their energy inside the classroom, but they are also serving this population as mentors, as staff members who live on campus to hopefully try and hug children in the way they need to be hugged so that they too can feel safe and protected and loved and then thrive. Education is about planting a seed, and yesterday we got a glimpse of the seed that is being planted in 400 young minds, hopefully that they can grow into being the best themselves that they can be. We talked from an Ethiopian perspective about how once upon a time their unique cultural Jewish identity from the hill country in Gondor and Ethiopia was not well received in Israel, and they were taught to be less Ethiopian and more Jewish Israeli in the traditional sense. And today, these young people are taught to be proud of their Ethiopian heritage. They are taught to honor where they come from and how they come from a different society and how that society is very much part of the cosmos of the Jewish pantheon of culture. It was simply tremendous to sit with educators whose job it is to not just educate young people, but to educate other educators, and how these programs that are starting to work are replicated around the country in both the Jewish and the Arab sectors of society so that young people can grow and so that educators can grow into better educators, and we can teach ourselves and use the examples and the lessons and the Chaim Perrys and all the Michael Paleys in the world to share knowledge and wisdom, not just through a didactic methodology but reevaluating constantly what's working, what's not working, how can we improve. This critical sense of the educator striving to be better for his students and so that his students can be better for themselves and for others was part of the cyclical nature of our visit, of Jewish education throughout the ages, of the pay it forward methodology, and of why places like Yemin Ord are such a beacon of knowledge and light, not just in Israel, but around the world, so that these young people can grow into teachers and ambassadors and diplomats and politicians and pay it forward in a greater way. That the ripple of goodness coming from Mount Carmel can spread around the world, and we can be a light. Each child is a light unto the neighbor that is a beneficiary of their light and their goodness and their kindness and their compassion. And that is what I saw rippling from Yemin Ord. My name is Amir Katz, and I thank you for joining me on this journey around Israel as we explore the ideas and the places that make this society so special. My home, my heart, my Israel, my nation. L'chaim.